Welcome. This is a calm, slow, and sleepy journey through the past. A soft return to another hour, another place, another rhythm. Tonight we are not here to recall history in its grand movements or its bold declarations, but to inhabit the quiet that rests beneath it, to step into the stillness between moments. The soft folds of forgotten time where life was slow, practical, and dimly lit. You do not need to stay alert or gather information. You are not required to hold on to the thread of this story. There is no lesson waiting at the end. This journey is not a path to knowledge, but to rest. Let your thoughts loosen. Let your breath deepen. Let yourself become the kind of quiet that this night remembers. It is sometime after midnight, around the year 1910. In a version of New York City that has long since slipped into fog, skyscrapers are still young, no taller than a dozen stories. And the electric glow of the modern city is just beginning to spread, still patchy, still golden with gaslight. There are no neon signs, no horns, no blinking red warnings overhead. Instead, the harbor holds a deeper darkness, one made of sea mist and coal smoke, softened by the slow twinkle of ship lanterns and the rare flicker of a match struck in a sailor's palm. You are near the southern edge of Manhattan, where the East and Hudson rivers narrow into passageways. Ferries drift across the black water like thoughts you almost forgot you had. The streets are quiet now. The last wagons have rattled past. Most of the shops have closed behind thick wooden doors. You walk slowly, wrapped in a coat whose wool smells faintly of smoke and rain. Your hands tucked into deep pockets, your feet echoing softly over cobblestones, slick with the residue of mist. Around you, warehouses sleep behind shuttered windows, their bricks damp, their signs faded with age. The scent of fish lingers near the crates stacked beside the wharf. And every so often, the creak of iron wheels or the soft whinny of a horse seems to rise and disappear like breath on a cold mirror. You are not lost. You are not expected. You are simply walking, slowly, calmly, toward the edge of the world. There is a dock ahead, stretching out over the water like a wooden tongue, dark and wet and groaning faintly beneath its own weight. Each plank gives slightly beneath your step, not enough to disturb your balance, only enough to remind you that you are no longer on land. You are crossing over now, not yet to the boat, not yet to sleep, but into something in between. The ropes are thick and soaked with seawater. They rest like old serpents coiled around metal bollards, holding the vessel steady as it breathes in steam and stillness. The fog moves with patient curls between the pilings, and lanterns hanging from the dock posts cast halos of amber light that barely touch the edges of your vision. You can hear the water, soft, persistent, brushing against the hull like hands smoothing a blanket. And then the boat, the last ferry of the night. She is not large, nor elegant, nor fast. Her hull is steel, worn smooth by countless crossings, her paint faded into a kind of memory of green and cream. The windows glow behind frosted glass, flickering slightly as the lamps sway with the tide. The smoke from her stack rises in a slow, twisting ribbon, pale against the night sky, and disappears without urgency. There are no calls from the crew, no bells or shouts, only the quiet nods of men in thick coats, the dull clank of chain, the soft shuffling of boots on damp metal. She is not in a hurry. She has made this journey so many times that time itself no longer matters. She waits steady and old and sure for those who still have somewhere to go. As you approach, the sounds become fewer, not louder. Not because the boat is silent, but because your mind is beginning to settle. Your breath is slower now. The air is colder, yet kinder. You are aware of the weight of your body, the warmth at your core, the way your shoulders drop slightly with each step, as if the tension of the day is slowly seeping into the dock behind you. Others are boarding ahead of you. A tall man with a cap pulled low over his brow, a woman with a small case in her hand, her scarf wrapped twice around her neck, a child walking quietly, his gloved hand buried in the fabric of his father's coat. No one rushes, no one speaks. They move as you move, slowly, with the certainty of ritual. Your foot crosses the threshold. Wood to steel. The soft bounce of the ramp under your step, the boat shifts, just slightly, as it accepts your presence, and the harbor seems to exhale. The light from the interior cabin spills out onto the deck in a narrow beam, barely cutting through the mist, but enough to warm your skin. You pass into it, and the scent changes. Now, less salt and more oil, more wool, more coal, more people. Inside, the benches are worn smooth, lined along the walls like pews in a drifting chapel. The lamps overhead glow through rippled glass, the kind that distorts the light into softened shapes that move when you move. It is warm here, not hot, not close, but warm in the way that suggests someone thought of you before you arrived. You sit, and the bench creaks softly beneath your weight. The window beside you is fogged, but not fully opaque. You can still see the faint outline of the dock retreating, the distant shadows of the city behind it, the dull glint of wet stone under low lamps. The ferry begins to move, but you hardly notice. There is no lurch, no sound of engines rising. Only a slow pull, the sense of motion without destination. A vibration through the floor, like a heart too tired to race. You feel your body grow heavier, not with fatigue, but with presence. You are here. You are on the water. You're being carried. There is nothing now you need to hold on to. You do not need to know where the ferry is headed. You do not need to remember where it began. This moment does not require attention. It asks only for surrender. You may let your thoughts drift. You may let your eyelids lower. You may forget the color of the wood, the texture of the coat against your skin, the order in which the passengers boarded. That is all fine. The ferry does not mind. The night does not demand. This crossing belongs to slowness. You are allowed to vanish gently, like the lights on the dock behind you. And when the journey ends, whether you are still awake or far from this boat in its gentle sway, it will not matter. The story will have carried you word by word across the harbor. It will have done its work. You may wake without remembering any of it, without recalling the scent of steam or the creak of the pier or the moment your foot touched metal. But something in you, deep, quiet, and unseen, will have crossed with the ferry and arrived on the other side. Let us begin, slowly now, with the place where your steps grow quieter. The pier at night does not announce itself. It appears gradually, emerging from the shadows at the end of a narrowing street, where gas lamps stand farther apart, and the stone beneath your shoes gives way to old grooved wood that bends ever so slightly beneath your weight. It is not just a platform, it is a threshold, a place between land and water, between doing and resting, between noise and breath. The boards beneath you are slick from mist, and you can feel, even through the soles of your shoes, the deep saturation of salt and thyme embedded in the grain. The air shifts around you here, heavier and colder, touched by the open tide. The sky above you is unreadable, neither fully cloudy nor truly clear, only muted, like the inside of a glove, stretched taut across the dark. There is no clear line between earth and sea, only a slow softening of edges, a quiet surrender of land to water and of you to the waiting ferry. The smell of the harbor reaches you in layers, not all at once. First, the salt, sharp and clean, clinging to the back of your throat. Then the bitter tang of coal smoke, drifting down from unseen stacks on unseen ships. Beneath that, something wooden and damp, like barrels long emptied, or ropes left soaking too many days in the rain. There is also iron in the air, not from blood or rust, but from old anchors, rusted chains, and the slow decay of metal touched by decades of tides. Your breath becomes visible, not in thick clouds, but in thin, wavering threads that disappear as quickly as they come. Like thoughts you once meant to write down, but never did. The wind is not strong, but it moves deliberately, brushing against your collar. Whispering across the dock with the sound of fabric sliding over fabric. It does not speak in words, but in rhythm. The rhythm of arrival, of departure, of pause. Somewhere to your right, you hear the soft groan of a pulley straining against weight, followed by the steady drip of water falling from a hanging rope. Each sound is isolated, not echoed, as though the fog absorbs everything into itself. Footsteps approach and fade without ever showing their source. A metal hook clinks gently against the side of a loading cart left near the edge. You pass by thick wooden crates stamped with markings you cannot read, their corners softened from wear, their contents unknown. Beside them, A pair of coiled ropes rest like sleeping animals, their fibers damp and swollen, smelling faintly of brine. Oh, nothing here is new. Everything bears the marks of use, of passage, of repetition. The pier is not a place where stories begin. It is where they pause, where they pass through, softened and quieted by the water below. Beneath the wooden slats, you can hear the water, not crashing, never roaring, only rising and falling in a rhythm older than speech. It laps against the pilings with a persistent hush, the same way breath moves in a room where someone has just fallen asleep. It is not a sound that calls attention to itself. It is a background, a foundation, the low hum that holds all the silence in place. Occasionally, a gull cries out in the distance, not shrill, but muffled, as if even the birds are reluctant to disturb the deep stillness of the hour. The pier creaks beneath your step, and the sound is round, wooden, hollow, like the inside of an instrument played with the gentlest hand. Each step you take is slower than the last, not out of hesitation, but because the moment seems to invite it, to stretch itself outward like fabric, like sleep, asking to be lingered in. There is no sign, no clock, no voice calling your name, only the glow of the ferry ahead, resting at the end of the dock like something half asleep. But before we go there, before you place your foot on the gangway and feel the boat shift, beneath you, this moment on the pier belongs entirely to you. You are not in motion, but you are not still. You are not waiting, but you are not hurrying. You are in between. And this in-between holds its own kind of peace, one built from fog and rope, from the smell of salt and the creak of old wood, from the long breath of the harbor and the deep rhythmic pull of water. Stay here, just a little longer. Let the dock remember your footsteps. Let the air wrap around you like wool. Let the pier, for now, be your bed. You move slowly along the dock, not out of fatigue, but because every step seems to deserve its own moment. The grain of the wood beneath your shoes is uneven, rough in some places, softened in others by years of passing feet, of rain and boots and time. Your eyes adjust to the dim light, and you begin to see what at first you missed: the curve of a rope looped carelessly around a mooring post, the remains of a newspaper pressed flat by moisture against the boards, the glint of something metallic resting in the space between two planks. These are not objects that call attention to themselves, but they are part of the pier's memory, part of what it has absorbed. The dock is not clean, but it is not dirty. It is lived in, bearing the dust and residue of 1,000 quiet crossings. Somewhere nearby, a soft knocking sound repeats, slow and arrhythmic. Wood against wood, perhaps a boat nudging the dock with the tide, or a loose shutter tapping against a warehouse wall. It is not rhythmic enough to count, not loud enough to name, only present, like a thought you cannot fully trace. Further along the edge, you notice the dull glow of a small lantern, hanging by a nail from the wall of a weathered shack where a man once may have waited to take tickets, though tonight it is empty. The flame inside sways slightly with the movement of the air, casting a gentle circle of gold that does not extend far, only enough to illuminate a few feet of dark, warped wood beneath it. It flickers without anxiety, steady in its solitude. There are no signs here to instruct you, no painted lines, no warnings and stenciled letters, no arrows to point the way. The pier assumes that if you have found your way this far, you already know what to do. Or perhaps it knows that you do not need to do anything at all. Even the ferry, which waits ahead in partial shadow, makes no announcement of itself. It offers no sound beyond its resting breath, no movement beyond the gentle rocking of its hull. It is simply there, waiting, as it has waited each night for decades, with the patience of something too old to hurry. You do not need to quicken your pace. The boat will not leave without you. To your left, as you pass an open stretch in the dock railing, you pause to look down. The water is dark, but not black. It is a soft, rippling gray that moves like silk pulled slowly across the surface of a table. Small eddies catch the lantern light in shifting patterns, and the pilings below are thick with salt and sea life, dark green and brown and barnacled, slick with a sheen that reflects nothing but still glistens. You watch as the water continues its quiet work, shaping, rubbing, wearing down the stone foundations of the pier as it has done for centuries. There is something sacred about the erosion. something sacred about time doing what it always does, gently, slowly, and without being seen. You inhale, and the scent is rich now, layered and earthy. Smoke from coal and wood fires carried across the harbor mixes with the must of damp timber, with salt, with rope fibers softened by age. Gosh, there's a metallic edge to it all. The smell of engines sleeping beneath decks, of steel tools left in cold air, of coins and a wool pocket warmed by the hand that holds them. This is not a sterile air. It is full of things that once moved, once lived, once passed through, and stayed long enough to leave something behind. You are not alone in breathing it. You are simply the latest to join its rhythm, the newest set of lungs in a long, invisible chain. Further along, your eyes are drawn to an old wooden bench, set against the wall of a long-forgotten storage shack. It is damp and weathered, one of the legs slightly crooked, so that it leans to one side. On it rests a thin wool scarf, forgotten perhaps by someone who came through earlier, or perhaps left there on purpose. Folded deliberately as a kind of quiet offering to the night, the bench does not invite you, but it acknowledges you. It says people have paused here before. Its people have rested here, in silence, in solitude, wrapped in the sound of water and fog. You do not sit, but you linger. The fog thickens slightly now, not so much that you lose your bearings, but enough to blur the outlines of the buildings behind you. It is a gentle kind of obscurity, like lace drawn over a mirror. You can still sense the presence of the city, its rooftops, its sleeping windows, the occasional echo of a closing door, but they no longer claim your full attention. The world is smaller here, closer, contained within the length of the dock and the slow breath of the harbor. There is no need to look behind you. The ferry lies ahead, and the past can rest for a while. You become aware of how little you are carrying. Perhaps a satchel slung over one shoulder, its strap crossing your chest like a boundary between waking and sleep. Perhaps only your own hands, clasped together or tucked into pockets, feeling the warmth of your own body through wool and cotton and time. There is something liberating in this lightness. You do not carry maps. You do not carry tools. You do not carry burdens, at least not the kind that can be seen. You carry only what this hour requires. A body moving slowly, a breath that deepens, and the openness to step aboard. Somewhere faintly, a low horn sounds. Not from your ferry, but from another vessel far across the bay, perhaps a steamer setting out toward a longer route. The sound is deep, sonorous, resonating through the mist like the voice of the water itself. It does not signal anything for you. It is simply part of the harbor's language. It echoes off stone and steel, then fades again into the fog, leaving behind only stillness and the hum of silence reasserting itself. You feel it pass through you like a vibration rather than a noise. As you reach the final stretch of the pier, your body begins to notice the shift beneath your feet. The dock flexes more noticeably here, as if acknowledging that it is drawing closer to the tide's edge. You feel a slight give with each step, a soft bounce that speaks not of instability, but of responsiveness, of a structure built to move gently with the sea, not against it. The boards creak more frequently now, and the lantern light glows brighter, reflecting off the riveted metal of the waiting ferry's hull. The contrast between wood and iron, between past and present, is not jarring. It is quiet. It is natural. Leads into the other, as sleep follows waking. Ahead of you, the gangway rests like a tongue extended from the mouth of the vessel, sturdy and silent. It is flanked by low railings, rusted in places, smoothed by years of gloved hands and cautious feet. The ferry itself remains still, not indifferent, but unhurried. You pause for a moment before stepping on, not from fear, but out of reverence. The crossing has not yet begun, but you already feel that something in you has shifted. Your pulse, your breath, your thoughts, each of them slower now, each softened by the air, by the weight of the dock, by the unspoken welcome of the sea. The pier behind you stretches into quiet, its length no longer measured in steps, but in memories. It holds no signs of your passage, no marks or footprints that will last beyond the morning tide, but it remembers you. It remembers the rhythm of your walk, the angle of your shoulder, the way your breath fogged in the cold. It holds these things not like possessions, but like stories overheard and gently kept. And as you turn toward the ferry at last, stepping slowly onto its deck, the pier offers no farewell, only silence, only fog. Only the hush of a night that was always meant to carry you forward. Your foot finds the first metal plate of the gangway, and the surface beneath you responds with a dull vibration, not sharp, not sudden, but resonant, like a low hum felt more than heard. The shift from wood to iron, from dock to vessel, is not dramatic, but your body registers the change in texture and temperature. The slight give of the ramp beneath your weight as it floats ever so slightly above the tide. The sound of your step is softer here, muted by fog and by the thickness of the air itself. Around you, others are moving forward as well, but no one hurries, no one speaks. Each person crosses with the same hushed awareness, as if the act of boarding is not merely a transition, but a quiet ceremony. A woman adjusts the clasp of her handbag with both hands, her gloves creaking softly as she does. An older man, his hat low over his brow, walks with a limp that seems long familiar, his cane making only the gentlest of taps as it touches the deck. Behind you, the creak of the dock fades. Ahead, the interior of the ferry glows softly like the warm mouth of sleep inviting you in. There is no need to decide. Your body already knows to move forward, slowly, gently, into the hush that waits. You take another step, and then another, each one slightly heavier than the last, not out of effort, but as if your weight is slowly shifting from one kind of presence to another. The iron under your feet is cool and solid, yet it moves almost imperceptibly with the ferry's own breath, rocking gently, responding to the motion of the water below. A handrail runs along your left side, painted metal smoothed down by countless gloved fingers before yours, its curve still faintly warm from the palm of the person ahead. The wood of the dock has been left behind now, though its scent still clings to your coat, damp cedar, salt, and something older, perhaps tar. Around you, footsteps continue in soft succession. It's not rhythmic, but natural, like leaves falling at different intervals onto the same patch of earth. There is a shared reverence among the passengers, not expressed in words or glances, but in the way each person honors the silence, not because it is required, but because it feels right. A man ahead of you pauses briefly before entering the cabin, removing his cap in a slow, deliberate motion and tucking it under his arm. He exhales through his nose, long and steady, then disappears through the narrow doorframe swallowed by the dim light beyond. A woman follows, adjusting the edge of her scarf, her hand brushing the fabric at her throat as if assuring herself of its place, or perhaps as a nervous habit passed down from her mother. A pair of boys in matching coats linger near the entrance, one nudging the other in jest, but their laughter is restrained, respectful. Muffled by the heaviness of the hour, you are near the threshold now, and you feel the warmth of the ferry's interior begin to reach you, not as a sudden change, but as a gradual envelope, the way the body feels the nearness of a stove before the flame is visible. You step through the doorway and into the first cabin, and the space receives you with a hush that feels almost sacred. The walls are painted in tones of pale cream and olive, dulled by smoke and age, their corners softened by shadow. The lamps above glow through frosted glass, suspended from brass fixtures that sway slightly with the boat's motion. They do not illuminate brightly, but tenderly, like the final candle left burning at bedtime, offering just enough light to see, but not enough to disturb the quiet. The floor is narrow-planked wood, scuffed and darkened from years of boots and shoes, yet still holding a sheen that suggests care, as if someone still comes through with a rag and oil on quiet mornings. The windows along the walls are fogged at the edges, their centers slightly clearer, offering glimpses of water and sky that blur into one. You find yourself moving more slowly now, not from fatigue, but as though your body is responding to the rhythm of the place, the subtle roll of the deck beneath you, the sway of the lanterns above, the way each bench seems to invite without insisting. The passengers are dispersing, settling into seats, not as if they are claiming territory, but as if they are returning to a place they already knew. A woman near the far corner is pulling a small book from her handbag, the pages yellowed, the cover cloth bound. Her gloved finger traces the seam of the binding before she opens it. A man across the aisle folds his hands over his lap and closes his eyes at once, not in sleep but in something close to it, a posture of rest that asks nothing of the world. You choose a bench near the middle, its wood smooth beneath your palm as you lower yourself into place. The ferry rocks gently underfoot, and your body adjusts without needing to think. The movement is not unlike the breathing of someone asleep beside you, slow, deep, repetitive. You lean back against the seat, your coat falling open slightly, the warmth of the cabin curling inward to greet the fabric beneath. The sound of your own breath grows clearer here. It echoes gently in your chest and throat, a quiet rhythm overlaid upon the hush of the ferry's motion. Somewhere far off you hear the creak of metal against wood, perhaps the docking chains tightening, or the shudder of the rudder preparing to move. But none of it feels mechanical. Nothing is abrupt. Everything within this space seems to have grown into its purpose over time, like a house that remembers how it was once used. You glance toward the small glass window just above the cabin's exit. It is fogged but glistening, the moisture catching the low light in scattered beads. Through it, you can just barely see the outline of the dock slipping away, its lanterns shrinking into haze, its shape becoming formless. You feel no pull of farewell, no pang of separation. Only the quiet acknowledgement that something has ended and something else has begun. The ferry is not yet moving quickly, but it is moving. The world outside is beginning to change shape, and the interior grows quieter in response, as though the motion encourages the silence to deepen. The man who boarded before you now lifts his satchel to his lap and opens it with care. Inside, the contents are unclear. Perhaps tools, perhaps papers, perhaps nothing at all. He reaches in slowly and then lets his hand rest still, as if the gesture was more about touching something known than retrieving it. His eyes drift toward the floor, not in sadness, but in surrender. Across from him, a small girl sits beside her mother, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze fixed on the blurred window. The child does not fidget, does not speak. She watches, unmoving, as the lights of the dock vanish into fog, her body as still as a prayer. This is not the kind of stillness taught. It is inherited, instinctive, part of the unspoken knowledge of nighttime travel. You shift slightly in your seat and feel the grain of the wood beneath your fingertips. It is not polished, but worn smooth by the passage of bodies before yours. You imagine hands that once rested where yours now do, shoulders that leaned here in coats long turned to dust, shoes that tapped gently against the floorboards as this same boat, or one like it, made this same quiet journey. The ferry has known many nights, many crossings, and though its passengers change, the quiet remains the same. Constant, soft, unquestioning. You are not alone in this space, even if no one speaks to you. You are joined by presence itself, by the act of being here, of sitting still, of breathing slowly while the city fades behind. The lights inside the cabin sway faintly with the movement of the vessel. Their glow does not reach every corner but leaves certain areas in partial shadow, the space beneath the benches, the corners of the ceiling, the narrow passage that leads toward the stern. These darker places do not feel ominous. They feel restful, like parts of the body allowed to sleep, while others remain just barely awake. You are aware now of the warmth of your own limbs, the slow loosening of your jaw, the subtle drift of your eyes as they begin to unfocus. The ferry does not require your attention. It welcomes your forgetting. You hear a cough, short, soft, stifled. Someone clears their throat. Another passenger shifts in their seat, and the wood creaks softly beneath them. These are not interruptions. They're part of the composition. The ferry breathes with you. Its sounds, its textures, its movements, all of them unfold without demand. You are allowed to close your eyes now, or to keep them half-lidded, resting on the blurred edge of sleep. You are allowed to not know what time it is. The world will not punish you for drifting. And in this small, warm space, carried gently through darkness, you realize that no one here has anything to prove. There are no destinations declared, no conversations about work or plans. Each person is wrapped in their own quiet, not avoiding one another, but honoring the shared act of silence. It is a kind of communion, not sacred in the traditional sense, but sacred in its humility. The ferry is a chapel without scripture, its benches pews, its motion a lullaby passed from one set of shoulders to the next. You are not worshiping, but you are being held. The ferry does not accelerate, does not announce its departure with trumpet or horn. It slips away from the dock the way a sigh leaves the lungs, low, slow, and inevitable. You feel it only as a suggestion in your spine, a softness beneath your ribcage, a loosening in your knees. There is no thrill in the movement, only surrender. The city recedes, but you do not chase it with your eyes. The future approaches, but it makes no noise. You are in the center of something without boundaries, a passage, a breath, a pause. And so you sit, not waiting, but allowing. You do not need to stand. You do not need to move. You may remain right here, listening to the ferry's heartbeat and your own. The bench beneath you holds you without condition. The light above you pulses without urgency. The water around you carries everything forward. The vessel, the fog, your body, your thoughts. You are not late. You're not early. You're already exactly where you need to be. There is a narrow stairway leading downward near the rear of the cabin, its railing made of thick wood darkened by time and touch. Its treads worn concave in the center, where countless feet have stepped and waited and stepped again. You approach it slowly, hand grazing the rail, feeling the coolness of the wood where it meets your skin. Not cold, exactly, but dense with temperature drawn from the bones of the vessel itself. The light here is dimmer, filtered through a small brass fixture above the landing, its bulb casting a soft yellow glow that doesn't quite reach the lower steps. The stairwell descends in silence, without announcement, without urgency. No sign tells you what lies below. No sound escapes to hint at what waits in the belly of the boat. And yet as your foot finds the first step and your weight shifts forward into the downward motion, you feel something change. A subtle deepening of air, a soft increase in warmth, and the beginning of a silence that is not the absence of noise, but the presence of quiet itself. Heavy and full, like a wool blanket held just above your shoulders. As you descend each step, you notice the air beginning to shift. It is thicker here, not unpleasant, but close. A warmth that wraps itself gently around your arms and neck, rising from below like steam rising from sun-warmed stones after a late autumn rain. The temperature is not oppressive, but comforting, like standing too near a stove after coming in from the cold. The scents begin to change as well, no longer the briny mist of the harbor or the faint perfume of wool and coal smoke from above, but something earthier and older. Hot metal, oiled machinery, varnished wood, and the ghost of tobacco from some long-ago pipe. The sounds are different too, more internal. A distant low hum pulses softly beneath your feet, constant and deep, like a breath being held just beneath the floorboards. It is not a sound that demands attention. It is a presence. A reminder that the ferry is not just carrying you, but living around you, holding you in its slow, mechanical exhale. Inside the lower cabin, the first thing you feel is not heat nor light, but stillness. The kind of stillness that settles only in places built for waiting. The space welcomes you not with noise or gesture, but with density. The air is soft and warm and unmoving, like the interior of a pocket kept close to the heart. The lighting is low, diffused through heavy glass fixtures mounted flush against the ceiling's gentle curve. The walls are paneled in old wood, their grain rich with oil and age, their surfaces reflecting not brightness, but a dull amber glow that moves gently as you move. The benches, built directly into the wall, are thick and slightly curved, polished by thousands of passengers who sat exactly where you do now, letting their shoulders fall and their breath stretch long. The silence here does not feel empty. It feels full, as if it is holding something invisible but shared. The heat in this space is not forced, not manufactured. It radiates slowly from the ferry's very body, from the pipes that run along the baseboards, from the walls that wrap around you in a slow arc. A cast iron radiator sits along the far side of the room, humming with a low, steady voice that never rises above a whisper. A woman sits beside it, hands bare and open, her palms hovering just above the metal as if in prayer. Her gloves are folded neatly on the bench, untouched. She doesn't look at the radiator or at anyone else. She only closes her eyes and lets the warmth soak into her bones. The smell of the heat mixes with the deep scent of aged varnish and worn leather, with the quiet breath of wool coats and tired shoulders. Nothing here is perfumed. It is the smell of something used, inhabited, necessary. A young sailor leans against the curved wall of the cabin, his arms folded, his chin resting against his chest. He is not asleep, not fully, but he exists in that space between awareness and surrender, where the body remains upright, but the spirit has already begun to drift. Near him, an older man holds a folded newspaper in his lap. He does not read it. His eyes linger somewhere in the space just above it, as though caught on a memory that isn't entirely his. The paper is slightly wilted from the room's moisture, and the ink has softened in places. Its presence is symbolic, not of news or information, but of ritual, of hands that still need to hold something, even when the world grows still. In a corner, an old felt hat rests on a hook, its crown slumped inward, as if remembering the shape of a head no longer here. You settle into a seat tucked near the bend in the hull, where the curvature of the ship cradles your body like a bowl. The warmth here is stronger, but not stifling. It gathers slowly around your legs, your spine, your fingers, with the patience of something that expects nothing in return. The bench yields slightly beneath you, just enough to receive your shape. The grain of the wood is smooth under your palm, and you let your hand rest there for a moment without purpose. The cabin has no windows at eye level, and this creates a sense of enclosure. Not confinement, but cocooning. There's nothing to see, and so your eyes grow softer, your gaze less defined. Time begins to slow in new ways. Thoughts unspool. That leaves your shoulders. You are not asked to be alert here. You are only asked to remain. The low thrum of the engine, once distant and vague, now reveals itself as something steady and grounding, like a second heartbeat rising from below the floorboards. You don't hear it so much as feel it in the soles of your feet, your spine where it touches the bench, your rib cage. When you pause to breathe and notice that the air is moving in rhythm with something older than breath itself, this sound is not intrusive, does not demand your attention. It's like the muffled sound of someone turning pages in the next room, or the soft ticking of a clock under a blanket. Always present, always slow, always waiting. Begin to lean into it just a little. Your muscles settle, your legs grow heavier. The thought of standing again drifts further away, no longer necessary. Even your thoughts, once jagged, once sharp, now glide gently across your mind like oars moving through thick, quiet water. The ferry holds you in place, not with force, but with patience. And the deep internal voice of its machinery reminds you that forward motion is possible without effort. That movement can happen even while you remain completely still. Around you, the details begin to blur, not in clarity, but in significance. The corners of the room soften, and your eyes half-lidded. Pass over the other passengers not as individuals with stories or destinations, but as silhouettes wrapped in wool and dusk, resting within the same pocket of stillness you found. Across from you, a man's boots remain still beneath the bench, laces tucked in, as if arranged by invisible hands. On the ledge of a porthole nearby, a tin cup sits untouched. It's a faint ring of condensation forming beneath it, as if it too has found its place and chosen not to move again. The light that reaches this corner is less a beam and more a presence, amber, quiet, shaped by the haze in the air and the way it meets the wood. Everything seems slightly blurred at the edges, as if the air itself were exhaling slowly, releasing its grip on outlines and names. You are not entirely awake anymore. You are something else. Aware, yes, but unmoored from sharpness, untethered from expectation. Adrift inside a warm wooden shell that was never meant to be hurried. You close your eyes not with intention, but because your body has begun to trust the dark. Behind your eyelids, there are no images, no visions, just colorless motion, the kind that feels like slow water moving over stones, or like the sound of heavy rain heard from inside a thick-walled house. You remain aware of your weight, your breath, the press of your back against the bench, but you no longer feel the need to adjust or measure anything. The room continues to cradle you. The hum of the ferry's engine has merged with the hush of the passengers, forming a continuous low fabric of sound that wraps around your ears and sinks through your skin. Somewhere near your feet, a floorboard creaks, not sharply, not suddenly, but in the soft language of old wood, like a memory unfolding. You do not open your eyes. There is no need. You are not missing anything. Everything important is already happening inside the warmth, inside the motionless drift that carries you deeper into rest. And even if you were to open your eyes now, everything would remain unchanged. The glow from the lamp still golden and low. The curve of the wall still holding its breath, the boots still resting beneath the bench across from you. The ship would still be gliding forward in the dark, its direction unknown and unimportant, its course determined long before you ever stepped aboard. You begin to sense that the ferry has its own memory, its own way of remembering the hundreds, perhaps thousands of quiet crossings it has made. It remembers the weight of coats, the cadence of footsteps across metal stairs, the warmth of hands pressed against radiator pipes in the dead of winter. It remembers passengers like you, not your name, not your face, but the shape of your stillness. The way you sat in this same corner, the way you let go of the day without ceremony. This is not just a room. It is a place of erasure, of soft departure, of becoming smaller in the most generous way. You are not being forgotten. You are being gently folded into something wider, older, and quieter than yourself. Somewhere above, the ferry continues to glide forward through the darkened harbor. Yet here below deck, time no longer moves in lines or numbers. It pools instead in corners, gathers in folds of warmth, slows itself across the curve of the walls and the rounded edges of your thoughts. The space is unchanged, yet something in you has softened. Your body no longer holds itself up. It is being held. You're breathing. Once shallow, now comes deeper, slower, as if the lungs themselves were learning from the rhythm of the whole. Your thoughts have ceased to arrive in full sentences. Come now in fragments, images, textures, half-remembered scents, and then they drift away as gently as they arrived, without the need to finish themselves. You shift slightly on the bench, not to find comfort, but to notice it. The seat is not soft, but it gives in just the right places. The bench seems to know where the weight of a shoulder should fall, where the curve of a back will rest. The ferry does not push you into sleep. It simply allows sleep to gather around you as steam gathers on a cold window pane. Slowly, silently, without permission or resistance. Across from you, someone clears their throat. A soft sound, half suppressed, the kind people make more from habit than need. It does not disturb the room. It falls into the warmth, like a stone into snow, absorbed without echo. The man who made the sound glances down, then closes his eyes again, and his hands rest quietly on the bench beside him. Another figure rises from their seat with the same quietness. Crossing the small cabin in only a few steps, their shoes tapping softly against the floor like the ticking of an old wristwatch. They open a door near the rear, revealing a glimpse of another dim corridor beyond, and then disappear into it, leaving the space once again complete in its stillness. You feel no need to speak, no desire to move. Even the impulse to observe begins to dissolve. There's no longer a difference between being here and becoming here. The room does not feel occupied. It feels shared, like a breath held between two sleeping bodies, or the warm hollow left in a pillow after someone has risen and gone. You glance toward the low ceiling where the lamps sway just slightly with the ferry's motion. The movement is barely perceptible, but enough to make the shadows ripple along the curved wood, like reflections in a basin of warm water. The light itself is a kind of sleep, golden, constant, kind, with no sharp edges, no corners of brilliance. It reminds you of candlelight through thick glass, or the glow of a kerosene lamp in a room where stories are told slowly, just before bed. You wonder how many times these lamps have flickered against these same walls. How many faces have looked up at them in this same moment of surrender, not because they were tired, but because they were finally allowed to stop. You feel something soften behind your eyes, not tears, but the release of the need to hold them back. Your whole face relaxes, as if forgetting the shape it had been wearing all day. Even your name, the one you carry so tightly in your mind during waking hours, begins to feel distant. Not lost, not abandoned, just not needed here. You are not required to be anyone, not for now. You are aware, distantly, that the ferry will dock again, that doors will open, footsteps will return, and light will reach into this quiet place once more. But that moment feels far away, like the memory of a morning that has not yet come. The warmth around you is too complete, too forgiving, to allow concern to form. You are not trapped in this stillness. You're embraced by it. There's nothing waiting on the other side that demands more of you than what you have already given. You can remain here, in this pocket of slow heat and breathing wood, for as long as it takes. The ship may reach its destination, the city may wake again, but the room beneath the deck will always remember the way you rested here. Not for what you thought or dreamed or remembered, but simply for the shape you left behind. The outline of your presence folded into the ferry's memory like a pressed flower between the pages of an old book. And if you should drift into sleep now, here, in this hidden chamber of motion and stillness, You will not be alone, and you will not be misplaced. The ferry will continue to carry you not only across water, but across the border between waking and forgetting. Its walls will hold your silence. Its hum will cradle your breath. Its lamps will remain dim and unwavering, no matter how deep you fall. The warmth in the benches, the softness in the air, the faint scent of old iron and oiled wood, all of it will stay with you. Even as your mind slips into darker waters, into the hush of the harbor, into the deep quiet that waits beyond thought, you are safe here. The ferry knows how to carry what cannot be seen. It is always known. You may let go now. The room remains, the warmth remains, and you are still and you are held. The ferry moves forward with such quiet steadiness that you might not notice the change at first, the subtle shift in air, the barely perceptible coolness creeping in at the edges, the faint reappearance of distant sound beyond the hum of the cabin. You lift your gaze toward one of the small windows. Its glass fogged along the edges, but slightly cleared at the center, where time and warmth have thinned the mist. Outside, the world is not black, but softly veiled. A harbor swallowed in layers of fog, darkness, and flickering light. You see, not buildings, not boats, not people, but the glimmer of suggestion. Tiny pinpricks of yellow and white that shimmer as they reflect across the rippling water. These are not the harsh lights of modern cities. They do not blink or scream or brand themselves in neon. They glow like breath held between lovers, like lanterns left out for someone long gone. You find yourself watching them not as objects, but as gestures. Signs of life offered not to guide or warn, but simply to be seen, quietly, from a distance. You shift slightly on the bench, enough to lean toward the glass. The cool surface of the window meets your breath, fogging again in slow clouds that blur and reveal. Beyond the glass, the lights of the harbor drift across the water like stars set loose from the sky. They are soft and unhurried, some resting far out near the edges of the inlet, others clustered closer together along unseen piers and boathouses. Their reflections shimmer in long broken lines on the surface of the water, not straight, but bending, trembling gently as the current passes beneath them. It's impossible to tell where the light ends and the water begins. They seem to fold into each other, light becoming motion, motion becoming glow. As if the entire harbor were breathing through 1,000 tiny mouths, sighing light into the fog. You sit there watching, not for movement, not for meaning, but for rhythm. The lights seem to pulse in time with the ferry's motion, even though they remain fixed along the shore. Their reflections stretch and bend with the shifting surface of the harbor, trailing long lines that shiver with every subtle movement of the vessel beneath you. And as you watch them, something inside you loosens, the kind of loosening that happens not all at once, but in gentle stages, like a hand that slowly relaxes after holding too tightly for too long. Your breathing begins to align with what you see, slow, deliberate, shaped by the hush that surrounds everything here. It is the rhythm of a place without clocks, of a body no longer pressed for time. You do not notice when your thoughts begin to fade. They do not vanish all at once. They simply begin to thin at the edges, like mist dissolving under sunlight. There is no urgency, no stimulation, no reason to stay alert. Just the glow of the harbor, the gentle breath of the water, and the feeling of being allowed to fall inward. The window pane vibrates faintly with the hum of the ferry, and that small tremor becomes something intimate, a bridge between the interior world you inhabit and the vast, slow body of water surrounding you. You lift your hand not out of curiosity or effort, but from a quiet impulse, and rest your fingers against the glass. It is cool, but not cold, and as your skin meets its surface, you can feel both the softness of your own breath against it and the vibration beneath, passing into your palm like a signal from the ship itself. You aren't reaching out to grasp anything. There is nothing to hold, but in that light touch, you feel connected, not to a destination, not to the lights in the distance, but to this exact moment in time. The ferry is a body, and you are inside it. The glass is a membrane, and through it the harbor breathes. Close your eyes for a moment, and imagine that the lights outside are not lamps or windows or signals, but beings. Slow-moving, silent, watching the ferry pass as they have for years. Content simply to witness and disappear again into fog. One light in particular holds your gaze. A small, steady beacon rising from a structure you can barely make out through the mist. It flashes slowly, methodically, its pattern unchanged, as the ferry inches closer to its radius and then begins to drift beyond it. There's nothing dramatic about it, no urgency in its beam. It pulses like a deep breath, like a heartbeat at rest, like something old and practiced and at peace with being overlooked. You imagine this beacon has stood here longer than most buildings, longer than most people remember, that it has seen ferries pass like this one, again and again for decades, that it has watched faces lean against windows, hands resting on glass, breath-fogging panes just like yours. And you imagine, too, that the light is not indifferent but patient, aware of its solitude and still choosing to remain. It shines not to be useful, not to be seen, but because shining is what it knows. And there is something achingly beautiful about that kind of constancy, about the way some things continue simply because they were built to endure. Outside, the fog thickens like fabric being slowly pulled over the scene. The far shore disappears first, then the docks, then the shapes of buildings and ships. One by one, the lights recede into the softness, until all that remains are a few muted glows, drifting like ghosts on the water's surface. But they do not vanish sharply. They melt away, the way dreams do when waking begins, not erased, but absorbed back into the body, into breath. You feel a strange contentment as they leave, so their purpose has been fulfilled by simply being witnessed for a moment. Their retreat does not bring emptiness. In fact, the harbor feels fuller now, heavier with presence. The darkness is not hollow, it is dense, like velvet pressed gently around your shoulders. You sense that what remains unseen is still there, and will remain long after the ferry passes, long after this night has been forgotten. You are not alone in the fog. You are surrounded by quiet things that do not need names. You hear a sound below the window, quiet, sudden, and small. A delicate splash that seems impossibly soft for how deep it must be. Not loud enough to startle, not long enough to follow, just a single drop in the harbor's great mouth. Maybe a fish brushed the surface. Maybe a piece of wood floated against the hull. Or perhaps it was nothing at all, a trick of the ear, of the fog. But the sound lingers in you, not in your hearing, but in your chest. It opens something. The idea that even in all this stillness, the world is still gently stirring, not busy, not urgent, but just present. You begin to hear other small things. The creak of the ferry's upper beams, the subtle rub of metal against mooring rope somewhere behind you, the faintest murmur of water retreating from the hull as the boat slices through the current like a sleeping animal drifting through a dream. These are not interruptions. They are affirmations. The night is not silent, just full of breath, layered and low, like music heard through several walls, too soft to follow, too perfect to ignore. You lean back slightly from the glass, not out of disinterest, but because the view no longer requires your eyes. You feel the cool window pane leave your skin. The absence of its touch is just as textured as its presence had been. A hollow warmth where your fingers had rested, like a memory just beginning to fade. The bench beneath you supports the shift in your weight without resistance. It receives you. The ferry's movement, so smooth now, so consistent, begins to feel less like transportation and more like floating. Not above water, but inside it. You are not on the harbor. You are inside its breath, inside its long and wordless exhale. The fog has grown thicker, but you do not feel enclosed. You feel softened. The entire world has blurred its edges just for this moment. You are not being kept from seeing. You're being released from the need to look. The cabin around you is dim and quiet, but not empty. Other passengers remain, silhouettes wrapped in coats and quiet. You don't look at their faces. You don't need to. Their presence is felt more than seen, as if their breath joins yours in the rhythm of the ferry's movement. A woman near the far end of the bench shifts slightly, pulling her shawl higher around her neck. A man across the room rests his elbow on the windowsill, head bowed, one finger drawing faint shapes in the fog on the glass. No one speaks. No one gestures. No one asks for anything. This silence is not awkward or fragile. It is strong. It is built. It is being shared. And within it, you feel protected. Not in a way that shields you from the world, but in a way that lets you belong to it more completely. The silence has accepted you, made room for you, and now holds you with the same care the fog holds the light. You look once more toward the window, not expecting to see anything new, but simply to rest your gaze. The outside world has now faded into near-complete abstraction. Its only hints remain: the faintest glow of a lamplight dimmed by mist, the soft brushstroke of a crane arm above a dock, painted barely into view like a ghost caught in the act of departure. But even these are no longer destinations for the eye. They are impressions, shadows, soft echoes of things that once had edges. The reflection of the cabin's lamplight appears faintly on the glass now, mixing with the darkness beyond. You see your own blurred outline and feel strangely calmed by the way your shape has melted into the night. There is nothing sharp left, not outside, not inside. Just this moment of being part of the blur, of being content to not be defined, of being carried. Shift slightly once more on the bench, this time not out of restlessness, but as if your body is responding to the changing texture of the space around you, adjusting itself instinctively to the deepening hush, to the soft pull of gravity that comes not from the earth, but from the feeling of moving farther into stillness. The ferry's cabin glows behind you with a warmth that does not flicker. Its light is constant, gentle, and golden, the kind that feels like it was never lit, but has always simply been there. Somewhere nearby, someone coughs once. Low and dry, not disruptive, just human. The sound folds back into the air as quickly as it arrived, like a wave retreating without foam. All around you, the silence is not unbroken, but resilient. Every sound that enters it is softened, welcomed, and allowed to rest. You begin to feel yourself as part of that pattern. You are no longer observing the quiet, you're inside it. The window has fogged over again, thick now, almost entirely opaque. The world outside no longer offers detail. No lights, no lines, no hints of land or water. There is only the suggestion of depth beyond the glass, a velvet dark that resists focus, that exists just past knowing. But you do not feel shut out. The fog is not a wall. It is an invitation to stop trying, to stop naming, to stop seeking. You let your gaze fall downward. The light from the cabin reflects softly on your lap, on your hands resting loosely in your coat. They are still now, no longer gripping anything, no longer reaching. You feel the weight of your body as a kindness, a reminder that you are allowed to be here, heavy and quiet and warm, with nowhere else to go. There is no schedule in this moment. There's no arrival, only motion, only breath, only being carried. Somewhere in your awareness, you remember that the ferry is still crossing, that it is still progressing through the harbor, minute by minute, through currents and fog and the distant breath of tide. But that knowing does not press itself forward. It hovers behind your thoughts, like the memory of a story someone once told you softly, just before you fell asleep. You are no longer measuring distance. You are no longer waiting for anything. The ferry has become a floating cradle, and the harbor a darkened sea without edges, without threats, without questions. You feel the gentle rhythm of your own breath and realize that you are no longer breathing for the world, not for speech, not for action, not for meaning. You are breathing only because it feels good to do so. The air is warm and thick and slow, and every inhale carries you a little further into rest. You tilt your head lightly, and your temple finds the wooden wall beside the window. The contact is faint, but grounding. You do not close your eyes completely, not yet, but they begin to narrow, unfocus, drift. The world grows softer. The light seems to move farther away, though it hasn't changed. Time becomes slower now, like syrup cooling in the evening air. You think of nothing in particular. There are no images. No words, just a long, golden stretch of sensation, like being held in the palm of something large and kind and ancient. You are not asleep, but you are no longer entirely awake either. We're in the place between light and shadow, between motion and rest, between watching and dreaming. And then, at last, you let your eyes close, not because there is nothing left to see, but because everything worth seeing has already become part of you. The glow of the harbor lights, the slow movement of the ferry, the hush of fog across glass, all of it now lives beneath your skin, flickering gently behind your breath. The darkness beyond the window is not empty. It is full of water, full of silence, full of light that no longer needs to be seen. You feel the ferry continue to move forward, steady and unbothered, like a thought that knows exactly where it's going. And you, warm and quiet, are no longer watching. You are simply going with it, carried softly, completely into the night. You begin to notice the sounds more clearly now, not because they've grown louder, but because your listening has deepened. In the absence of urgency, your senses unfurl. Slowly, quietly, like a sleeping cat stretching its spine. The world around you hums in layers, each sound soft but distinct. Like threads in a weave so fine you wouldn't see it unless you were this still. There is the deep, steady thrum of the ferry's engine beneath everything. Not mechanical in the harsh sense, but organic, like the slow, circular movement of breath through a living chest. Above that, the faint creak of wood, adjusting to motion. Not one loud groan, but dozens of tiny, old, respectful sounds. The kind made by furniture in a house long inhabited. There is the occasional brush of coat against bench, quiet shift of weight in shoes, the whisper of a sleeve against a wool collar. No sound dominates. No sound calls for your attention. Instead, they join in something larger. A soft composition of night, of journey, of gentle existence, in a shared and darkened space. There is a sound you begin to notice, subtle and slow, emerging not from any single place, but from within the entire body of the vessel. It is not sharp or rhythmic, not something you would normally register in the clamor of daylight. It is a rounded, pulsing pressure, a muffled knock, distant and irregular. Like the quiet echo of footfalls taken in a memory rather than a hallway. It is the sound of the ferry adjusting to the water beneath it, of its structure whispering back to the sea with every gentle shift of tide. The longer you sit in stillness, the more you recognize its presence, not as interruption, but as reassurance. This is not a boat being pushed across the harbor. This is a creature making its way through the dark by feel alone, mapping its path through subtle conversations of wood and steel. Each knock is an answer, each vibration a question. It moves like breath, like pulse, like some quiet understanding between the vessel and the water it knows so well. Every now and then, the ferry exhales. The sound is unmistakable once you hear it, a low, hushed sigh of pressure released from deep within its frame, like steam escaping from a hidden valve or warm air pushed softly through iron lungs. It isn't loud. It doesn't come with force. Instead, it arrives with the softness of something ancient doing what it has done 1,000 times, adjusting, settling, remembering how to float. You hear it near a pipe close to your seat, or from a grate along the floor that releases the sound in a thin, steady breath. It is the kind of sound that fills the body rather than the room, not heard so much as felt in the chest, in the skin. When it happens, you find yourself pausing, not startled, not alerted, just stilled, as if your own body wants to match its rhythm. For a moment, you and the ferry breathe together, quietly, and then the hush returns, thick and whole. The passengers, too, contribute their own texture to the soundscape, not with speech or movement, but with the almost imperceptible traces of presence. A coat shifts. A gloved hand smooths a wrinkle on a lap. A boot taps once, lightly, then rests again. Someone inhales through their nose and sighs, not out of impatience, but as a way to settle into the silence more deeply. These sounds are not disturbances, or like wind brushing through reeds, or the settling of leaves in a forest. They mark life, yes, but life that is agreed not to impose. You do not need to look to know they are there. The air carries them, soft and near. As you sit among them, you begin to sense that everyone aboard has entered into a silent agreement. We will let the night hold us, and we will not speak over its voice. It is a rare, unspoken contract, one made not out of obligation, but out of a shared yearning for quiet. From somewhere deeper within the ship, perhaps beneath the deck or in a corridor that twists into the bow, comes a sound like chain over metal. It isn't dragged exactly. It isn't dropped. It slides, slowly, deliberately, in a long, low pull that suggests weight and balance and adjustment. It is the sound of a system correcting itself, a ship tending to its own equilibrium without needing permission or attention. You feel the vibration of it rise faintly through the soles of your feet, pass like a wave up the bench and along your spine. And then it fades, swallowed not by silence but by the thick breath of the ferry's own warmth. You picture ballast shifting, gears turning gently, water brushing against steel. None of it alarming, only ancient, necessary, known. These aren't sounds for humans. They're the language the ship speaks to itself, in tones and friction, in creak and weight. In the slow vocabulary of motion learned over decades of crossing, you begin to notice the way silence behaves in this place. It isn't passive. It doesn't simply wait for sounds to fill it. Instead, it seems to reach out, to wrap itself around everything that happens, every footstep, every sigh, every faint groan of timber, and soften it, hold it, give it room. It's a silence that has weight and temperature and movement. When the ferry shifts with the water, the silence shifts too, slightly like a long coat catching the wind and then settling again. It fills the corners of the cabin, pools between passengers, rests in the air above the floor, and drapes itself across your shoulders like a heavy, invisible shawl. And though it envelops everything, it doesn't isolate. It connects. This silence is communal. It is made of restraint, of agreement, of listening. You begin to feel as though you're not sitting in silence, but within it, as if it's something alive that is chosen, generously to hold you still for a while. Then from above, a soft bell sounds. Just once, single round chime, warm and distant, like a spoon gently touching the lip of a ceramic cup. It rings out through the layers of ceiling and deck, not with urgency, but with calm. A signal, perhaps. A shift in course. A marker passed. You have no need to know. The sound is not for you, and yet it feels like it was meant to be heard. You pause, not to interpret it, but to let it pass through you. It vibrates gently in your chest for a moment, then disappears without echo, as if the fog itself swallowed it. And still you remember it, not for what it meant, but for the way it arrived and left so cleanly, like a thought you almost had but didn't need to finish. The silence rushes back in, not like a void, but like a tide returning to shore. Full, unbroken, whole. Now you hear the water again, not as you did before, but in a new way, deeper, closer, more rhythmic. It doesn't crash or churn, it laps, it folds. It slides against the hull in long strokes, like fingers moving through cloth, slow and unhurried. You'll imagine it not as ocean, not as danger, but as someone guiding the ferry by touch, pressing gently along its sides, nudging it into the next breath, the next minute, the next inch of harbor. This is not the water of maps or distances. This is the water of the moment. Living, moving, listening. You lean ever so slightly forward, and the sound deepens, as if your own body has tuned into it more precisely. And for a long while, that's all you do. You listen to water in the dark, and you let it speak. Not in language, not in thought, just in rhythm, in presence, in the soft confession of movement, without destination. Then a hinge creaks. Somewhere behind you or above, not sharp, not jarring, but long and slow, a sound that curves like a yawn. Perhaps a door has opened in a corridor no one else can see. Perhaps a crew member passed through with quiet hands. Perhaps it was the ferry itself stretching its limbs in the deep dark. The sound travels briefly through the cabin and vanishes, like smoke drawn into the fog. No one stirs. No one looks. You do not turn. Sound is allowed to be exactly what it was. Brief, unexplained, and still complete. In this world of soft listening, no sound needs context. Everything that enters the room, from the shift of a body to the flex of a floorboard, is met not with judgment, but with welcome. And so, like every sound before and after, the creak is absorbed, folded gently into the ferry's dreamlike drift across the water. You begin to wonder how many of these sounds the ferry makes when no one is listening, when the benches are empty, when fog presses so tightly against the windows that even the deck lights lose their courage and fade into amber haze. Does the ship still creak, still hum, still let out those long, weary sighs through its metal bones as it crosses the harbor unseen? Imagine the silence on such nights. Not the silence of stillness, but the kind made from repetition, from patience, and purpose that requires no witness. Perhaps the ferry speaks more clearly when it's alone. Perhaps these sounds are the way it remembers. A groan in the floorboards, a pulse from the engine room, a whisper of steam escaping from a forgotten valve. all of them like the ferry muttering its story to itself as it floats through the dark, the way someone might murmur in their sleep. And now, tonight, you are here, not to listen for anything, but simply to be here while the ferry tells its tale in creaks and warmth and rhythm. A guest in a room that doesn't require language, only presence. You shift slightly, not out of discomfort, but with intention. A slow, minor movement that feels as ceremonial as turning the page of a beloved book. Your shoulder adjusts against the wood, your coat rustles softly, and your breath deepens in the new position. The sound of the shift is barely audible, and yet you hear it as clearly as you hear the hum of the engine. A brushing of fabric, a subtle sigh from the bench. And in this space, that is enough. Even the smallest gesture takes on weight here, not because it is grand, but because the silence has made room for it. You feel as though your movements are being observed, not by people, but by the space itself, by the air, by the wood, by the light. And everything responds not with judgment, but with quiet acknowledgement. Yes, says the hush around you. You are still here. We are still crossing. Nothing is required. Nothing is missing. You begin to hear things you're no longer sure are entirely real. Not because they are imagined, because they belong to a register of sound that hovers just beyond certainty. A low resonance that rises in your ears, not sharp enough to be wind, not mechanical enough to be machinery. A kind of soft harmonic, almost like a tone held in suspension by the water itself. At first you think it's a trick of your own hearing, a phantom echo. But then it returns, slowly rising just slightly above the deeper hum of the engine. Like a faint overtone in a song that's being sung without voice. You do not look for its source. You simply let it wash over you. The ferry is full of such frequencies, some real, some remembered, some belonging more to the body than the ear. They aren't meant to be understood. They're only meant to be received. You let them settle into your spine, into your breath. You are not hallucinating. You are harmonizing. And then comes a sound from the depths of the hull, fuller than the others, darker, longer. A moan, almost pulled from the core of the ship, drawn up like a cello string slowly bent under the weight of time. It vibrates through the bench, through your coat, through your bones. It's not loud, not mournful, not warning, just there, old, inarguable. It is the ferry acknowledging something, the shape of the tide, perhaps, or the memory of nights like this. You close your eyes and allow it to resonate through you. It's not a voice. It's not even a message. It's a presence, a statement of being, spoken in structure, in steel. You wonder if anyone else felt it, if anyone else paused in this same moment. But no one speaks. No one stirs. The sound is accepted the same way all others have been, gently, without question. You are not just hearing it. You are becoming part of it. And then, after all the pulses and hums and shifting breath, what remains is the near silence. Not total, not void, but so complete in its gentleness that even the smallest sound seems luminous within it. The hush is no longer just something that surrounds you. It becomes something that lives inside you, reaches into your chest, into your hands, into the soft space just behind your eyes. Yes. And tells you there is nothing to hold on to now. No decisions to make. No thoughts to sort. You are allowed entirely and without resistance to simply be. Your body settles even more deeply into the bench, as though gravity itself has become softer, less demanding. Your heartbeat slows, but not in sleep, in permission. The ferry is still moving, still murmuring, still carrying. But its voice has become one with the stillness. You listen, but not outwardly. You are now listening to the sound of listening. The act is folded in on itself, and you rest there, not watching, not waiting, not hearing, just being carried. Outside, the harbor continues to breathe. The water moves, fog thickens and thins. Somewhere beyond this room, somewhere on the water, distant lamps flicker behind the veil. But you do not need them anymore. The world outside can recede. It has done its part. Inside, in the warmth of the ferry's breath, the soft choir of structure and stillness continues its quiet song. Not ending, not beginning, simply enduring. You feel yourself dissolve slightly. Not disappear, but soften, as if the line between you and the bench, between you and the ferry, between you and the harbor, is no longer distinct. You are not alone. You are not exposed. You are not even separate. You are being held gently and completely in a vessel that speaks only in wood and whisper and hum. And as the crossing continues, as the night unfolds in its own slow silence, you remain, still, listening, resting, as part of the sound itself. You do not see it all at once. It arrives slowly, not through movement, but through emergence, a darker shape within the fog, barely distinct at first from the outline of cloud or sky. There is no announcement, no spotlight, no voice reminding you of what you are passing. The ferry continues on its path as if unaware, but something in the rhythm of the water changes. Something in the quiet draws your gaze outward. And then, through the thickness of mist and night, she appears, not in glory, but in shadow. The statue stands not tall, but still. It's not radiant, but resting. Her torch is dimmed by distance and fog, her outlines softened by the hour. But even without full clarity, you know it is her. Not because you see the crown, or the robe, or the shape, but because of the silence that settles around her. It is the kind of silence that belongs only to things that remember. And in that moment, she does not stand for freedom or triumph, or stands for time, for witnessing, for being seen and saying nothing. She's not looking at you. She's simply there. At first you think the fog might swallow her again, that perhaps it was only a trick of the eye, a projection made by memory and quiet suggestion. But she remains. Not more visible, but more present. Your eyes begin to adapt to the grays and shadows, to the slow light, and her form becomes less imagined and more defined. Still shrouded, still at a distance, but undeniably there. There is something solemn in the way she holds herself. No movement, no shift. Just this towering stillness planted like a single thought that has never needed to be spoken aloud. The torch she raises does not pierce the dark tonight. It hovers instead like a gesture remembered in silence. You realize she is not a landmark now, not a destination, not even a symbol. She is a witness. And the fog seems to respect her, curling around her in soft spirals, never touching her fully, as if even the mist understands that some things should be approached but not disturbed. You feel your body shift slightly, not toward action, but in awareness, as if something in you straightens, not with effort, but out of recognition. It is a posture born not from reverence, but from stillness. You are not gazing at her. You are in her presence. The difference matters. She does not ask for attention. She does not command it. But her existence, in this quiet moment of passage, invites you into a larger scale of time. Not the ticking of clocks or the movement of tides, but the slow sediment of years, of centuries. You begin to sense the weight of all the eyes that have passed over her from this same ferry, over decades, over lifetimes. You are part of a long, unbroken thread of silent lookers. None of them knew each other, none of them spoke, but each paused, as you do now, to notice her shape in the dark. That noticing becomes a kind of ritual. Stillness passed forward. The ferry does not change course as it passes. There is no adjustment in speed, no mechanical reverence. And yet it feels as though the ship itself recognizes the moment. Its engine hum deepens slightly, its movement becomes more deliberate. The air changes, not in temperature, but in pressure, thickens, gently, as though holding something sacred. You wonder if the crew feels it too, if they ever glance up from their instruments or routine and let their gaze rest here for a breath longer. Or if the ferry made of steel and bolts and time simply knows that this is the place where the city softens and memory gathers, where history lives not in noise but in form, and so it does not hurry. The passengers around you seem to feel it as well. No one speaks, no one rises, no one points. But you sense a subtle stillness come over the cabin, like a hush passed from one body to the next. The man across from you straightens his shoulders. The woman by the window leans just slightly forward. Even those whose eyes remain closed seem to rest more deeply, as though something inside them has grown heavier, more anchored. The silence in the room is not absence. It is filled with breath, with presence, with attention. It is the sound of collective remembering, of shared acknowledgement without words. The statue, seen or unseen, becomes a center of gravity, not pulling with force, but with meaning. She does not shine. She does not move. But she is felt. You glance out through the fogged window, and though her form is still faint, it is now undeniable. The folds of her robe, the curve of the pedestal, the shape of the arm raised skyward, torch tilted in solemn offering. Not light to guide, but light to mark. A gesture from another time, preserved not in marble or bronze, but in stillness. The fog shifts slightly, and for a moment her face appears, not detailed, not clear, but suggested through the gloom. And in that brief unveiling, she becomes less a statue and more a presence. Not watching you, but simply existing beside your passage. You do not know what you feel. It is not pride. It is not awe. It is something softer, something more difficult to name. A recognition, perhaps, or a quiet sense of being noticed. She is both closer than you expected and farther than she seems. The ferry glides past her slowly, deliberately, and though you never feel the ship turn or hesitate, you sense a deep respect in its path, as though the ferry, too, knows it is passing through something more than water. Around her, the fog seems to open just slightly, a pale halo of mist holding her in place. The city lies beyond, hidden. The harbor surrounds you, invisible. But here, in this breath of night, there is only her, alone, silent, still. You find yourself leaning not forward, but inward, as though trying to fold this moment into memory before it vanishes again into time. The thought crosses your mind that she has seen too much, that she has stood for too long, that her stillness holds not just the promise of freedom, but the weight of everything that freedom has required. She does not tell stories. She does not explain. She only remains, and in her remaining she offers something quieter than hope, the chance to pause. The chance to be seen by something that will not ask who you are or what you've done, but only that you were here, that you passed, that you crossed this water once, and that you were part of the long procession of lives that have floated by in silence. You do not know how long you have been watching. Time stretches around her, not in hours or minutes, but in breath, in stillness, in the way fog holds shape. The ferry does not stop, but neither does it seem to continue. It drifts, it hums, it glides. And you, wrapped in the hush of the cabin, surrounded by the quiet breath of strangers, looking out at a monument held gently in shadow, you feel suspended, not just in space, but in history. As if you've stepped briefly outside the clock and into something slower, older, and wider than yourself. You close your eyes briefly just to see what remains. And what stays behind the lids is not her image, not her outline, but the feeling she left, the stillness, the weight, the watching. It settles into you like a warm stone placed in the palm. Not heavy, just known. You carry it now, whether you meant to or not. And you understand that this is what she gives, what she has always given, not guidance, not safety, but the quiet agreement that your presence, too, will be folded into the passage of things. The ferry begins to glide past her, not turning, not veering, simply continuing, as if parting from an old companion with whom no words were exchanged. The shape of the statue grows slightly more distant, though the fog makes distance difficult to measure. You do not feel yourself leaving her. Feel her staying behind. Not forgotten, not fading, but remaining exactly where she always has. Not changed, only receding. You keep your eyes on her as long as the outline allows, and even once it disappears fully into the curtain of mist, you continue to look. Holding her place in the air with your gaze, the way one stares into a darkened room long after the light has been switched off, something remains there, something you can't explain. Her absence feels shaped like a mold, still warm from the object it once held. There's a silence that settles over you now. It's different from the earlier quiet, deeper, fuller, as though everything within you has stilled in response to what you've seen. You are not the same person who boarded the ferry, not entirely. Something subtle has shifted, like a stone adjusted in a riverbed. Imperceptible in the flow, but real. Your thoughts have slowed again, but not from drowsiness. From reverence. You feel as though you've passed through something. Not a place, but a threshold. As though the act of witnessing her, in her shadowed stillness, has marked the crossing. You wonder how many others have felt this. How many night passengers have turned their heads and found her there, cloaked in mist, unchanged, and left carrying a silence of their own. The fog thickens once more behind you, and soon there is no trace of the statue, no glow, no silhouette, not even the suggestion of her shape. And yet she does not feel gone. She feels held by the water, by the air, by the memory you now carry. It's as if the harbor itself knows how to wrap her away until the next ferry arrives, not hiding her, but folding her gently into its dark pocket of mist and tide. The absence is not abrupt. It is a slow drift, a soft fading. Spras. This too is part of her gift. Not only her presence, but the way she teaches you to let go, not to forget, but to release the need to hold too tightly. She has watched over too many nights, too many crossings, to belong to any one moment. You were allowed to see her, and now you are allowed to move on. You lean back against the bench, your body no longer reaching forward. There is nothing to chase. The statue is behind you now, and ahead lies only more water, more fog, more ferry. The cabin holds its silence. No one speaks of her. No one names her. And yet everyone carries her, somehow. As if her image has been pressed into the silence like a seal in wax, soft, precise, and quietly permanent. You feel her in your breath, in the warmth of the bench beneath you, in the hum of the ferry that did not pause but did not rush. She is not something that happened. She is something that remains. You lean back against the bench, your spine slowly sinking into the shape it's been forming for the last hour, not out of fatigue, but as a kind of surrender. The wood beneath you is no longer separate from your body. It feels almost like the ferry itself has grown softer, warmer, as though it has absorbed the shared silence of its passengers and now returns it gently through the grain. You are no longer watching anything. You are simply absorbing. And yet, even with your eyes turned inward, you feel her behind you. The statue, now hidden in the fog, her outline erased by distance and night, but her presence is not gone. It lingers in the air, in the motion of the boat, in the slight change in your posture, as if something in you, now aware of having been seen, refuses to close again. You carry her not in image, but in sensation, the memory of stillness, the impression of being quietly acknowledged by something ancient and unwavering. She remains with you, not like a landmark, but like a silence you once entered and never fully left. Outside, the harbor is beginning to shift again, but softly. The lights of the city, scattered and dimmed by the mist, begin to draw faint patterns in the distance. A collection of glows more than points. More like the suggestion of something waiting than a destination fully formed. You watch them not with anticipation, but with patience. They do not call to you. They do not summon. They simply reveal themselves, slowly, cautiously, like someone stepping into a doorway without knowing if they're welcome. And still, your mind returns to her, to the statue you've just passed, to the sense of gravity she left inside you. You wonder how many people have come to this moment expecting something spectacular, only to find quiet, only to find that the real weight of the experience lies not in the sight of her, but in what she does not say, in what she allows you to feel when no one else is speaking. You realize that what she offers isn't revelation, it's reflection. And in that stillness, she's left you facing yourself. Quieter, slower, more whole. The ferry hums forward, steady as breath. And you, seated in that hum, in that warmth, feel changed in a way you cannot easily define. Not enlightened, not transformed, but gently altered, as if something inside you has softened, or opened, or shifted ever so slightly to the side. The city ahead is no longer simply a place you are arriving at. It is a continuation. A shore that exists not to mark the end of the crossing, but to complete the rhythm it began. And within you, the statue remains. Not as symbol, not as image, but as presence. Quiet, constant, deeply rooted. You carry her now, not by choice, but because she has already become part of you. Folded into the ferry silence, the harbor's breath, the wood beneath your spine. You close your eyes once more, not to sleep, not to dream, but to listen. To the echo of stillness left behind, and to the slow, patient passage toward whatever comes next. At first, the city is only a rumor, not a skyline, not a shape, but a faint accumulation of light trembling on the edge of the water. You notice it not as something that appears, but as something that gradually becomes. A soft gathering of brightness behind the veil. No single source discernible, only the collective hush of illumination. It does not blink. It does not rise suddenly. It builds gently, like the first warmth before dawn, too subtle to measure but unmistakable in presence. The ferry does not speed up, does not lean toward the shore, as if eager to arrive. It continues with the same steady breath, the same hush of water beneath its hull, the same soft hum that has carried you through fog and past memory. And in that patient rhythm, you begin to see the city not as an arrival, but as another layer of silence. A vast and glowing architecture of breath and time waiting just beyond reach. You begin to sense the return of gravity, not the downward pull of weight, but the inward settling of time. The harbor, which just moments ago felt infinite, begins to gather itself, too narrow to suggest direction. The lights become steadier, more numerous. The dark between them shortens. Still, nothing moves quickly. The ferry remains slow, balanced, unchanged, and the city allows it. There is no spectacle here, no triumphant return, just a slow approach. Quiet reconciliation between vessel and shore. You look out and notice lampposts along the docks, their glow yellowed and diffused by moisture, like halos forgotten on a damp stage. Beneath them, nothing stirs. No footsteps, no voices, only the distant suggestion of motion, a glimmer on glass, a shift in silhouette. The shoreline does not greet you, it receives you, not like a host, but like a room you once left quietly and are now allowed to enter again without explanation. You watch a distant warehouse pass along the edge of your vision. A low, rectangular silhouette, its windows faintly illuminated from within. Can't see what's inside and it doesn't matter. The building is not trying to show itself. It simply exists, tucked beneath the weight of fog and steel and light, part of the machinery of the shore. And around it, you notice other quiet shapes. A railing rusted at the edges. A ladder descending into black water, the faint outline of a docked barge at rest. These things do not announce the city. They're the city, not its face but its body. It's a part that continues breathing when no one is looking. The ferry glides past them, not with distance, but with familiarity, as though acknowledging each structure with a quiet nod. You feel your breath deepen again. Not from awe, from grounding, from the understanding that this is not a city of arrivals. It is a city of returns. Somewhere above the deck, you hear a small clatter, a shifting of chain, perhaps, or the distant clunk of metal rung against metal. It's the kind of sound that doesn't come from a machine starting, but from one remembering how to move. You don't look toward it. You let it be. It becomes part of the rhythm now. Part of the sound of the city revealing itself slowly, not in volume, but in texture. The noises are subtle, a soft creak of a mooring line under tension. The echo of something dropped far down a loading ramp, the flutter of a flag you hadn't seen until now, catching the fog like a hand brushing fabric. These are not urban sounds. Not yet. These are shoreline sounds. Sounds that still belong to the water, even as they brush against land. You let them in gently, like the first thoughts returning after a long sleep, knowing they signal change, but not demanding you wake. And slowly your thoughts do begin to return, not in speech, not in order, but in presence. You feel them forming in the edges of your awareness, not urgent, but ready. Names, tasks, streets, windows. The familiar contours of the day ahead begin to sketch themselves faintly on the inside of your mind, like chalk marks on wet stone. You do not resist them, but you do not reach for them either. You let them hover. You are still in the space between. The city ahead is no longer a blur, but it is not yet yours. Not yet. The ferry, gentle as ever, continues its slow passage forward, giving you time, not much, but enough. Enough to breathe, enough to watch, enough to remain in stillness, even as the shore draws nearer and the lights begin to gather into streets again. You notice a railing now, not one aboard the ferry, but one lining the edge of the dock ahead. It gleams slightly under the dull light of a single fixture. worn smooth in some places where thousands of hands must have rested, leaned, waited. There's something intimate about it, something deeply physical. It reminds you that the city is not made of glass and distance, but of touch, of pressure, of pause, of the small ways people press themselves into space over time. Imagine a night long ago, another passenger stepping off this same ferry, brushing fingers against that rail and passing without even knowing why. And now the railing is still here, waiting, not expecting, just continuing. You realize the city does not meet you with ceremony. It meets you with the memory of others, with structures that outlast footsteps and surfaces that remember hands. A few more buildings take shape, but you do not catalog them. You let them pass as they are. Quiet, lit from within, their windows pulsing softly through the mist. An apartment with a single lamp glowing behind curtains. An office tower with only one floor still illuminated, like a thought someone forgot to turn off. A dockside cafe with chairs stacked in shadow, their silhouettes curved like sleeping figures. You watch them slide past without ownership. They do not call you back. They are not calling at all. They are simply present. And in their presence, they allow you to remain in this moment of drifting. This isn't yet the city you will walk into. It's the threshold, the space before. A harbor edge where names haven't yet returned, and time still moves according to water. The ferry exhales again. A long, low release of air that brushes along the hull like a sigh, almost as if the vessel itself is bracing for the ending of this quiet. You feel the vibration rise through the bench, up into your back, and settle in your throat. Not uncomfortable, just real. The kind of sound that reminds you things are shifting. A marker, a beginning of return. Round you passengers stir. Slowly, respectfully, like people waking in a room not yet filled with daylight. A foot shifts. A coat is drawn closer. A head is lifted. Still no one speaks. And you realize how rare this is. To be surrounded by others, and not be asked to leave the stillness behind all at once. To be allowed a few more breaths. A few more feet of harbor. A few more flickers of light before rejoining a world that will not wait. The shore is close now. You can see the wet lines where water has touched concrete, the gentle bobbing of moored ropes in and out of view. The ferry moves even slower here, like someone walking through a familiar doorway in the middle of the night, careful not to wake anything inside. A gull calls once, sharp and distant, and is gone. Somewhere behind a wall of metal containers, a vehicle shifts its weight with a low mechanical groan. But the city does not rush to greet you. It allows the moment to stretch, to breathe, to soften. You feel not a return to noise, but the memory of it approaching, the hum of the world beyond this boat, already beginning to glow behind the curtain of mist and waiting asphalt. And then for a few final seconds, everything feels suspended. The ferry moves, but you feel as if time has paused around it. The lights do not blink. The buildings do not press forward. The shoreline is right there, just feet away, but you are not yet on it. This is the last breath of the crossing, the final pocket of in-between where silence still belongs and motion still hums without demand. You know you'll stand soon. That footsteps will echo, that doors will open, but not yet. The ferry, wise in its rhythm, gives you these final seconds like a gift, to gather your breath, to hold the night one moment longer, to listen once more to the sound of being carried. You do not say goodbye to the harbor. It would be too small a word. Instead, you let it stay with you, not in memory, but in rhythm, in the weight of your breath, in the hush that still sits quietly beneath your thoughts. As the dock nears and the journey begins to end, you realize something. You are not stepping off the ferry as the same person who stepped on. It's not because the city has changed, but because you have learned how to arrive quietly. Because the harbor taught you how to listen. Because the night held you and the ferry carried you, not just across water, but across the silent space between everything you left behind and everything you're about to return to. The moment of standing arrives not as an instruction, not as an obligation, but as a quiet invitation from the world around you. The ferry has begun to still, not fully, not finally, but enough for your body to know it is time. You rise slowly, more out of reverence than necessity, feeling the warmth of the bench still cradled in the curve of your spine. Your coat folds softly around your arms as you gather it closer, Your scarf shifts gently along your collarbone, and you take a breath that feels less like a preparation and more like a continuation. The floor beneath your feet no longer sways. It breathes. There is no announcement, no call to move. And yet, like the turning of a page or the final line of a song, something in the air leans forward. The moment has arrived, not with sound, not with force, it's just with presence. You are no longer a passenger in motion. You are a person preparing to return, not to noise, not to speed, but to ground. Around you, others begin to stir as well, but without urgency, without rustle or noise. Coats are adjusted, scarves unwrapped gently, hats placed on heads with care. As though each movement is happening under the soft pressure of memory. There are no instructions spoken aloud, and none are needed. Everyone seems to understand that what has just happened, this crossing through fog, light and silence, deserves to end without being broken. A man near you stands and brushes his gloved hand across the wooden rail once, not to clean it, but as if to say thank you. A woman tucks her book gently into her coat. Her fingers linger for a moment on the worn cover, then release it without fanfare. No one makes eye contact. And yet there is a shared stillness among you, a slow and silent bond born not from conversation, but from having passed through the same quiet. Your shoes touch the floor again, this time not as part of rest, but as part of motion. You begin to walk slowly, following the rhythm of others as they move toward the exit. The ferry creaks under the shift in weight, not complaining, just acknowledging. The boards give slightly, as if remembering the shape of footsteps from nights long past. You hear the soft brushing of soles against the floor, the whisper of wool against canvas, the faint metal rattle of a door latch somewhere ahead. And beneath all of it, the hum of the ship still pulses, steady, slow, a last breath being held before the release of arrival. You do not hurry. You let your body remember the pace of water. You let your hands stay loose. You carry nothing tightly. The crossing has taught you how to walk again. Not to go somewhere, but to feel yourself moving. You approach the threshold, a narrow corridor leading toward the outer deck. The light here is colder, thinner, more industrial, but it does not feel harsh. It feels transitional, like the cool of air just outside a warm room. You pass through it as if passing from dream to waking, your eyes adjusting, your breath deepening. Through the small window in the door ahead, you can see mist curling along the outer railings. A pale orange bulb glows just above the exit, its halo shaped by fog. The door is slightly ajar. Beyond it, the dock waits, wide and silent, stretching into shadows lined with quiet lamps and steel. The world has not rushed to meet you, has waited patiently. You step outside. The wind greets you without sharpness. Not a slap, but a whisper that passes along your coat sleeves and brushes your cheeks. You inhale, and the air tastes different, colder, more metallic, laced with salt and something faintly electric. It is city air, touched by tide and dust, and it wakes something in your ribs. The ground beneath you is no longer wood but concrete, solid, steady, textured with rain and the marks of many boots. You place your foot down and feel the city's weight rise to meet you. Not to push, not to claim, just to say, you are back. The harbor behind you recedes into fog, the ferry still moored, still glowing dimly, still breathing. You do not turn to look at it yet. You are still between. The few passengers who disembarked with you begin to fan out across the dock, some walking ahead with slow determination, others pausing by railings, glancing into fog, adjusting collars. No one speaks. Even now, the silence holds. It is no longer the silence of the crossing, but the silence that lingers afterward. A hush that follows you like warmth left in a coat. You realize how gently the ferry has delivered you here. Not by force, not by instruction, but by rhythm. The city waits. It does not intrude. You are not expected. You are simply allowed to arrive. You glance back, finally, over your shoulder. The ferry rests at the dock, its windows still glowing, its frame wrapped in mist like a sleeper not yet roused. It does not seem like a vessel at rest, but like one waiting for another passage, for another traveler, for another moment of silence. You feel a soft ache in your chest, not sadness, not longing, but gratitude. The kind that arises when something has given you more than you expected without ever asking your name. You let that feeling settle. You do not name it. You let it be part of your breath, part of your footstep, part of the air that now surrounds you. You begin to walk again, this time toward the edge of the dock, where the lamplight pools and the fog thins just enough to see the outline of buildings beyond. Their windows are brighter now, their reflections steadier, but they do not shout. They remain distant, watching. You do not walk quickly. There is no destination waiting, only the rhythm of motion returning to your legs. You feel the ground, how it no longer sways, no longer hums, and yet your body still remembers the movement of the crossing. You walk with that memory in your joints, in your neck, in the way your hands remain loose at your sides. The dock is long and quiet. Your footsteps make soft sounds against its surface, not loud enough to disturb, just enough to say, I am here. You pass by a stack of crates, a rusted bollard, a coil of rope still wet with harbor mist. Each detail feels textured, real, and gently lit. You begin to understand that the city has not lost its quiet. It only keeps it in certain corners, behind certain doors, within certain crossings. You have found one of those corners, and now you are returning with a slowness that the city will not demand of you, but that you can choose to keep. And in that choice, something shifts gently inside you. Not like a door opening, but like a breath held for a very long time finally let go. You do not name the change. You do not rush to define it. You only notice how your body walks differently now, less from the ankles, more from the center. You notice how your hands remain calm at your sides, not clenching, not searching. The ferry is behind you, and yet it is not. It is still in your lungs, in your skin, in the quiet weight of your coat across your shoulders. Even the streetlights feel softer, less demanding, more diffused. As if they too had passed through fog and come out the other side without forgetting how to glow gently. You walk slowly, not because of fatigue, but because the rhythm of slowness has become familiar. Something earned, something valuable. You begin to understand that the real destination was never the dock, or the city, or the shore. It was this exact way of returning, quiet, intact, and unchanged by the noise waiting up ahead. You step through the last metal gate at the edge of the terminal, and the city opens before you, not in spectacle, but in stillness. The street is nearly empty. A few lamps flicker overhead. A lone taxi idles at the curb, its engine purring like something half asleep. You hear the faint hum of a refrigerator behind a diner window, the soft clack of your shoes on wet pavement, the distant echo of wind slipping between alleyways, but none of it rushes toward you. None of it overtakes the quiet that still surrounds you like a second skin. You are in the city now, fully and finally. But you are also still somewhere else, still in the glow of the ferry's cabin, still near the sound of the water folding gently along the hull, still wrapped in the hush of fog that asked nothing of you but your presence. You realize this space, this thin, fragile moment between crossing and arriving, is the rarest kind of threshold, one where the silence comes with you. And so you begin to walk forward, not with hesitation, not with weight, but with awareness. Each step, a soft continuation of everything you've just passed through. The ferry behind you is still real, still breathing in the harbor mist, still waiting for another crossing. And the city ahead begins to take shape around you. More voices, more lights, more angles and edges. But for now, you carry both. You carry the slowness, the warmth, the listening, carry the memory of motion without urgency. The night does not pull at you. It opens before you like a quiet road. And as you walk into it, you are no longer merely returning. You are bringing the harbor with you, in the stillness of your spine, in the depth of your breath, in the silence that lives behind your eyes. You have crossed, and you have arrived. But the water does not leave you. It flows with you softly into the city. The city at this hour does not greet you, does not rise to meet you with noise or urgency. It simply allows you to enter, like a room left open, like a hallway lit dimly, for someone expected to return late. The sidewalks are wet from the harbor's breath, glistening beneath old sodium lamps that flicker without pattern. Each step you take feels both yours and borrowed, echoing softly off storefronts with their gates drawn, casting sound upward into the tall, quiet walls of sleeping buildings. Above you, Windows burn faintly, scattered like stars trapped in brick. A single curtain moves. Soft television glow pulses once, then fades. The city is not watching you. It is resting. But in its rest, it makes room. Not for arrival, not for celebration, but for passage. And you, still wrapped in the rhythm of the ferry, begin to walk not toward anything, but with something. With the silence still folded behind your ribs, the sound of your footsteps becomes your companion now, soft, rhythmic, echoing faintly into alleys and doorways. There's no one walking ahead of you, no one trailing behind. Just the muted percussion of leather on damp concrete, repeating like a small, respectful knock on the surface of the night. You pass a bus stop, empty bench, schedule flapping once in the wind, a single bulb burning above like a watchful eye that no longer expects anyone. You glance at it, not to read the routes, but to notice the way the light falls. Long, slanted across the sidewalk, illuminating nothing in particular. And in that quiet beam of light, you feel how much the city is not showing you, but allowing you to witness. It is not a city built for midnight, but it remembers how to hold it. You move past closed and bodegas. Their metal shutters painted with layered graffiti, names and shapes barely legible, like whispers piled atop older whispers. A dry leaf skates briefly across your path, its movement sudden, then gone. Above, a faded awning sighs softly with the wind. You reach an intersection where the traffic light cycles through its colors, red, green, yellow, though no cars pass. The light changes only for itself now. You wait, not because you must, but because the rhythm feels worth honoring. You look both ways before crossing, not out of habit, out of courtesy. There is no traffic, but you recognize the street is alive. Not bustling, not loud, but aware. The city in this hour is not asleep. It is simply watching with its eyes half closed. As you continue, you feel the weight of the buildings more acutely. Not oppressive, but encompassing. They rise around you like cliffs wrapped in glass and fire escapes, their faces silent, their doors closed, their windows still. You pass beneath them like a swimmer beneath boats, not touching, not disturbing. You are surrounded, but not observed. The architecture does not impose, it shelters. A street lamp ahead flickers once, then steadies, casting a halo on a puddle that reflects your outline. You stop for a moment, not to admire, not to document, just to stand. The silence of the harbor is still with you, not as memory, but as rhythm. And in that rhythm, you do not fill the space. You become part of it. There is something gentle about this city tonight. It's not soft in the way of comfort, but soft in the way of restraint. It could be louder, it could glow brighter, but it chooses not to. Or perhaps it simply is what it always is at this hour. And only now, after the crossing, are you quiet enough to notice. You feel the difference in your body. You're not walking from one place to another. You are gliding like the ferry. Each step you take seems to release something. A worry, a list, a weight. You feel the day you left behind dissolving one corner at a time. The pavement doesn't ask where you've come from. It simply holds your foot and then lets it go. And in that motion, the city becomes not a grid of destinations, but a long, open exhale. You pause at a corner where a laundromat sits closed behind fogged glass. Inside, the outlines of machines gleam dully under a motionless fluorescent light. Rows of metal drums like quiet moons turned toward no one. A chair sits angled just slightly away from the window, as though someone left in the middle of a thought and forgot to return. You stand there for a long moment, watching not the scene itself, but the space around it, the silence that fills the room, the way the air inside appears thicker, slower, untouched. There is no sound, no warmth, but there is still something present, kind of memory held in stillness. And outside, as you listen to it through the glass, you feel not excluded, but included in its quiet. As if the city is offering you not a story, but a breath to share. Further on, a deli awning flaps once in the wind and then rests, a neon sign above it. Open 24 HRs glows falsely, its promise no longer active, the interior long gone dark. You smile slightly, not with irony, but with recognition. Even promises can sleep. The letters, still lit, don't feel deceptive. They feel loyal. a message held aloft even in absence. You walk beneath them slowly, your shadow stretching ahead and then behind. A cat darts across the sidewalk ahead of you, vanishing between two trash bins without noise. You do not quicken your step. The silence has slowed you too deeply. You continue as if in a tunnel made of light and fog and pavement, not enclosed but gently guided. The city isn't pulling you forward. It's keeping you company. You pass beneath scaffolding now, long segments of hollow pipe and dark planks overhead, the scent of damp plywood and rust thick in the air. Your footfalls sound sharper here, bouncing off metal and asphalt with a different timbre, more grounded. The world narrows for a moment. The buildings above disappear into framework, and your view becomes a straight, silent corridor lined with steel and shadow. You could walk faster, but you don't. There is something sacred in the constriction, a reminder that space doesn't have to be wide to feel open. You let the echo of your own movement follow behind you. You begin to feel that the night is listening back, not loudly, not clearly, but with attention. You have not spoken in some time, and the city has not asked you to. It has given you its quiet, and trusts that you will carry it gently. The air here feels thicker, touched with exhaust and something metallic, but it doesn't disturb you. Breathe it in fully, recognizing it as part of the place, part of the body of the city that never truly sleeps, but sometimes closes its eyes. You walk past a hydrant, its cap gleaming under a streetlight, water beaded on its side like dew on skin. You pass a doorway recessed in shadow, the outline of stairs barely visible through the iron grate. The world is full of doors right now, some closed, some simply quiet. You don't feel the need to open any, just to notice them, just to move between them like a traveler through a language that has no need for words. You are not lost, you are not late, you are not early, you are exactly where you should be. Inside the pulse of a city that at this hour no longer asks anything of you except to keep walking softly. You begin to feel your body loosening in a new way, not from tiredness, but from the slow acceptance that the city won't demand anything from you tonight. You've walked several blocks now, but it feels as though you've moved through a single long breath, in and out, with no interruption. You pass beneath another row of streetlights, their glow filtering softly through the mist and tree branches, painting circles on the sidewalk like pages left open to dry. A parked bicycle stands against a wrought iron fence, its seat wet from dew, a plastic bag tied loosely to the handlebars. You don't stop to study it, but you take it with you. The shape of it, a waiting posture, the sense of someone having gone inside and forgotten it in the rain. The city is full of these small resting places, not signs, not symbols, just pauses. You reach a small square. Not a plaza, not a park, but an open corner where the street widens just enough for silence to collect differently. A single bench sits beneath a tree whose leaves barely move. You do not sit, but you pause. And in that pause, you feel the full length of the night behind you. The ferry, the harbor, the lights, the fog, the sound of wood underfoot. They are not gone. They walk with you still, folded into your stride. The city has not asked you to forget. It has given you room to carry it all. The window of a bakery across the square is lit, its shelves still empty, the counter untouched. Soon it will glow with movement, but not yet. You stand in that almost light, knowing it will come, but knowing too that it does not need to arrive quickly. You begin walking again. The air feels different now, thinner, touched with the barest trace of morning, though the sky remains dark. Something is lifting in the edges of the city's breath. You can feel it, but it does not press you forward. It only reminds you that time still exists. You pass a row of stoops and fire escapes, a collection of windows closed and curtain drawn. The buildings around you feel less like structures and more like bodies. At rest, breathing slowly. You imagine them dreaming in bricks and radiators, exhaling steam through their quiet chimneys. Your own breath matches theirs. You are not apart from the city now. You are inside its sleep. The sidewalk narrows slightly as you turn a corner. And for a moment everything feels closer. The fences, the facades, the lamps. But rather than feeling confined, you feel gathered, as if the city is pulling you gently toward its heart. A street sign rustles softly in the wind above your head. You don't need to know the name of where you are. The point is not direction. The point is presence. You walk slower again, not out of fatigue, but out of care. Care for the silence, for the space, for the crossing that still echoes in your chest like a low note held too long to be accidental. You are not walking through the city, you are walking with it. And the difference changes everything. And then slowly, you realize the world is beginning to return. A car passes in the distance. A window clicks shut above you. The low rumble of early trucks stirring far off begins to brush the underside of the city like fingers drumming faintly on wood. Morning is not here yet, but it has taken its first breath. The city has not woken, but it has started to listen differently. You stop one last time beneath a lamp whose light touches the collar of your coat, and you exhale deeply, not to release anything, to mark the end of something small and perfect. The crossing, the walking, the silence, the harbor. You will carry them all. It's not like a secret, but like a rhythm you have learned to keep. And as you turn your face toward the street ahead, you do not look for what's next. You simply begin the next step. Slowly, quietly, as if you still walked on water. When you finally reach the door, it doesn't feel like arriving. It feels like returning to a room that has been breathing in your absence. The key turns slowly in the lock, not stiff with resistance, but careful, as though the door has been holding its breath. You push it open with the weight of someone entering a space that already knows them. The air inside is warm, still touched by time. Nothing greets you. Nothing moves, and yet you feel seen. The walls do not speak, the furniture does not shift, but there is a presence in the quiet that wraps around your shoulders as surely as your coat. The apartment has not waited in the way of clocks or calendars. It has waited in stillness, in the way dust gathers in corners, in the way the air softens near familiar windows, in the way the silence inside has shaped itself to the rhythm of your absence. This is not just where you live, this is where you are remembered. You close the door behind you without sound. It latches with a soft click that feels less like a barrier and more like a seal, as if the night outside has been gently folded closed. And the room around you exhales in response. You do not turn on the lights right away. The darkness is not unfamiliar, it is layered, gentle, made of corners you already know by heart. You can feel the shapes of the walls in your shoulders, the distance to the kitchen in your ribs. You take a few steps forward, slowly, letting your fingers trail lightly along the surface of a table, the back of a chair. They are where you left them, not out of obligation, out of memory. The room has not changed, but it has settled into itself differently, as if holding your absence carefully, preserving the weight of where you once stood, where you once breathed, and now returning those impressions to you intact. The soft hum of the refrigerator reaches your ear, low, steady, not cold, but consistent, like the breathing of something that is weighted without complaint. In the bathroom, a faucet drips once, a slow, perfect bead of water falling into a sink like a pause in a long sentence.
Somewhere near the window.
The radiator ticks, a metallic sigh adjusting to your return. These are not noises, they are recognitions. The home does not speak in welcome, it speaks in continuation. You step out of your coat and hang it by the door, the familiar weight of it sliding from your shoulders like the last layer of the city slipping away. The air touches your skin differently now. Not like outside, not like travel, but like a room that already knows how you breathe. You move toward the kitchen, not out of hunger, but from habit, a path made of muscle memory and the desire for light. You switch on the small lamp beneath the cabinet, and its soft glow spills gently across the countertop, touching the objects there as if reassuring them. A glass beside the sink, a plate not quite dried, a bowl of fruit shadowed in one corner. Everything remains in quiet relationship with one another. Nothing has shifted, and yet your presence changes the room just as the room changes you. You stand for a while in that light, not to do anything, but to feel it. The color, the weight, the warmth of being surrounded by stillness that now makes space for your motion. This is not the light of waking, it is the light of return. You walk slowly to the window and lift the shade only part way. The glass is cool beneath your fingertips. The world outside remains dark, the buildings across the street still asleep. Their windows blank, their silhouettes softened by fog. The lamp on your side of the glass reflects faintly, hovering like a small sun over your shoulder. You watch yourself in that reflection, not sharply, not clearly, but enough to remember that you are still here. The city continues outside. The harbor somewhere behind it still breathes, but for now, you are inside. It's inside a place that remembers your movements, your silences, your shape in the doorway. And in this pause between the walk and the rest, between motion and stillness, you realize that the apartment is not just holding you. It is allowing you to become quiet again. You move through the hallway slowly, your footsteps soft against the wood, as if the floor remembers the pressure of your soles and adjusts to meet them. There's no creak, no resistance, only the faintest vibration beneath your heel, like an old friend turning over in sleep at the sound of your approach. Your hand brushes against the edge of the wall, a texture you've touched 1,000 times. And yet tonight it feels slightly different. Warmer somehow, as though the plaster held the heat of all your previous passing. You move not with purpose, but with recognition. Each doorway, each threshold, each shadowed corner is a place where you have once paused, once leaned, once turned. And now in your return, the apartment answers not with change, but with continuity. It has kept your shape, it has kept your pace. In the bedroom, the air is still. It's a kind of stillness that accumulates in a room that has been waiting, not idly, but attentively. The way silence gathers in a museum after closing, or in the first few minutes of dawn, before the birds remember how to sing. You switch on the lamp near the bed, and its low amber glow falls across the folds of the blanket, the curve of the pillow, the half-freed book resting beside the clock. Nothing has moved, and yet your presence changes everything. The light now exists for someone. The air has begun to stir with breath. You stand at the foot of the bed for a moment, not from indecision, but from reverence. As if crossing into this part of the room means crossing into yourself. You're not preparing to sleep. You're arriving still, arriving more deeply into the stillness. You sit on the edge of the bed and your body remembers how to fold, the weight of the day redistributing along your spine, the fabric of your clothes softening against the sheets. Your hands rest in your lap, your head bows slightly forward, and you do nothing. You don't reach for a phone, you don't check a time, you don't prepare. You simply sit, feeling the apartment settle around you, the quiet turning of the walls, the low hum of distant plumbing, the stretch of wood along the windowsill. These are not background noises. They are the voice of the space itself. It is speaking now, not loudly, but clearly. You are back. You are safe. You do not need to become anyone right now. You only need to be still. The blanket folds back easily when you slip beneath it. The fabric touches your skin as though it already knew how to find you. You lie on your side, facing the window, where the curtain breathes just slightly in a current too soft to feel. The room holds its shape around you, but you no longer feel separate from it. Your body relaxes slowly, not collapsing, not dropping, but opening. Your breath deepens, not from effort, but because the silence allows it to. You begin to sense how deeply the apartment knows you, not in memory, but in rhythm. The pattern of your nights, the weight of your presence, shape your stillness takes when you no longer need to carry the world. You are not resting in the apartment. You are being remembered by it. And in that remembering, you begin to disappear into the quiet more completely. The room darkens further as you lower the light. Not into shadow, but into hush. You can still make out the outlines of familiar things. The curve of the chair in the corner. The spine of a book resting on the floor. The glass of water half full on the nightstand. Each object, quiet in its place, seems to hold its own breath. They are not symbols. They are not reminders. They are simply what remains when motion ends. And in their stillness, you begin to feel yourself mirrored. Not observed, but reflected in the silence around you. The room does not ask for anything. It does not interrupt. It only listens. And as you settle more deeply beneath the blanket, you begin to listen too, to the gentle murmur of fabric shifting, to the creak of the building's bones, to the faint rhythm of your breath finding a slower, older pace. You close your eyes not as a command, but as an instinct, not because the day has ended, but because your body has chosen to be held. The darkness behind your eyelids is not black, not empty. It pulses softly, full of afterimages. The glow of harbor lights, the shape of fog curling around pilings, the quiet symmetry of empty streets at night. You do not cling to them. You let them float, drift, rearrange. The ferry is still there, moving in the space behind thought. Its hum still lingers in your chest, not loud, not sharp, but deep and circular, like a memory made of sound. You are not trying to sleep. You are not trying to dream. You are simply allowing the night to continue. Here, in this bed, in this room that has waited, in this breath you no longer need to measure. And though your body begins to sink more completely into rest, something inside you remains aware. Not alert, not anxious, but quietly attuned. You feel the softness of the sheets against your shins, the weight of the blanket across your hip, the slight shift of air as the radiator exhales again from across the room. These are the details that do not wake you and do not vanish. They accompany you gently through the slow descent towards sleep. The apartment is not fading from you. It is cradling you. Its walls are not boundaries. They are arms. They do not hold tightly. They do not close. They shape themselves around your quiet and allow you to disappear gradually into the form you've left behind. Somewhere in the distance, a truck passes. Its engine hums low, then fades into silence. A faucet drips once again in the kitchen. The air clicks softly in the radiator. These are not interruptions. They're lullabies. Part of the architecture of nighttime listening, of being held in a place that asks nothing of you. The walls do not close in. They listen. The floor does not rise. It waits. The ceiling above you is not a lid. It is sky slowed to stillness. And within it, you are neither guest nor occupant. You are someone remembered. Someone known not by name, but by shape, by rhythm, by breath. And as your breath slows further, you no longer feel the difference between body and bed, between skin and air. You are not falling asleep. You are falling inward, to a space that has always been waiting for you. Through fog, through Ferry, through city streets and glowing windows. You are not dreaming yet, but you are no longer fully here. The harbor lives inside you now, not as memory, but as rhythm. The ferry moves through you still. The apartment, warm, patient, quiet, continues to breathe around you. You have not returned. You have been welcomed. You are still breathing, slowly now, deeper than before. The night has wrapped itself around you, not to hold but to let go. The ferry has long since reached the dock. The footsteps have faded down empty sidewalks. The glow of the city has softened into a distant hush. But something remains. A rhythm, a silence, a warmth pressed gently into the shape of your breath. You have not left the harbor. It has folded itself inside you. The water is still rocking beneath your ribs. The fog is still brushing along the edge of your thoughts. There is nothing left to remember, no names to hold, no places to return to. Only this quiet, this stillness, this slow descent into something softer than sleep. The walls around you do not press. The sheets do not bind. Everything has made room. The story has been told, not to instruct, not to explain, but to accompany. And now, with each breath that follows, you are drifting deeper into the space between words. The space where silence waits, where dreams begin, not with color, but with stillness. So rest now. Let the last sounds fade. Let your body float. You are not being watched. You are not being asked. You are being allowed. And that is enough. The ferry has stopped humming. The fog has lifted. The city continues, far away and unhurried. But you are here, quiet, warm, carried still. Good night.